Welcome, boys and girls. Costin here with a discussion about the useless Tretch Craventail and the MVP of the Badlands and the Darklands, which is Queek Headtaker. You know what? When I play campaigns, there are a few things that are terrifying to deal with. Queek, especially on legendary difficulty, is one of those nightmare scenarios. I mean, just look at the amount of army this bastard has in this campaign already at turn 15, and understand this is not even his final form or what you can achieve as a player. I played the entire campaign once where I was playing Krokar and I had like 6 different factions fighting Queek, very powerful factions, and he was like, I ain't hear no bell. And he actually was winning, even, in that situation. Pretty insane when you're thinking about it, because Queek is that kind of legendary lord. Tretch, he's garbage. I mean, he's still Skaven, sure. So Skaven and legendary lords are going to inherently be good, because Skaven are a good race. But he does have, well, let's just say, certain issues. Now, it's worth pointing out that because of their proximity to one another, if you're playing one, you can relatively easily confederate the other. Especially if you're trying to limit the territory that the other has, which is why I'm over here in Caracazul, because otherwise Quake would take the entire thing and make it that much harder to actually confederate them. And that's, by the way, one of the points in favor of Quake versus Tretch. Tretch is actually much easier to confederate than Queek is. Like, Queek can be an absolute nightmare to confederate in a campaign because with confederations, if an AI faction builds a massive amount of territory, they're going to be pretty annoying to actually get that confederation with. But then you have the starting position situation. You start with Crookback Mountain as Tretch. You have an enemy army over here. You take Mount Silver Spear, you take Mount Greyhack, but it's kind of a weird dynamic because you're initially just marching a bit north, then you're marching east. Then your victory conditions require you to deal with Emmerich. Not necessarily the best dynamic you have in a campaign. Also, while you do start with a good settlement with Crookback Mountain, because Rectus Grey Clan Hall is amazing, income, food, recruitment costs, recruit rank for Storm Vermin, etc., tradable resources. And yes, Skaven do trade. You want to trade with them, they can actually make a good amount of money from it. The problem here is you're either going to keep this element as is and then slowly grow it, or the smarter thing, which grants you a lot more power, is to abandon it and then get it to a higher level. As opposed to Queek, whose initial provincial capital in Caracazgal, he can just take as a flat-out tier 3, maybe even higher settlement very quickly in his campaign because he starts with a minor settlement. There's just some advantages, quite a lot of advantages, in actually starting with a minor settlement as opposed to a major settlement early on in your campaign. And this is not just even a Skaven thing, it's a Warhammer free thing. So that's something worth mentioning. Then we take a look at faction effects, which are the clear difference between the two of them. Because settlements, lord skill lines, items, all that, given the fact that you can confederate the other, they're not necessarily going to be that important. Though it is worth mentioning those kind of differences. So, what does Tretch get? He gets 10% damage resistance on Scary Voice. So if a unit breaks or is about to break, they get a bit of damage resistance. Yay, that's fantastic. Not quite. The reason I say it's not quite fantastic is because the way you should play battles, you kind of don't want your armies to break. It can be useful if you're fighting a very difficult enemy, say, multiplayer campaigns, versus campaigns, or a very difficult battle. It can be useful in that situation, especially if you have a melee-focused army, which you shouldn't as Skaven, because ranged Skaven are flat better, or weapon team Skaven are flat better than melee Skaven, which is one of the issues for both Queek and Tretch, because they're melee-focused Skaven. Then you get encouraged for Storm Vermin. Okay, a bit of a leadership buff. Does that matter that much? I mean, I guess if you're recruiting a bunch of clan rats and Skaven slaves, sure, but if you're recruiting actually decent units as the Skaven, not necessarily quite as much, but still a bit useful. Keep in mind, it does require you to have a decent amount of Storm Vermin in an army to really fully utilize it. The real faction effect is gaining free these effects for free turns when you declare war. This is ridiculous. The reason it's ridiculous is not because the effects themselves are so insane, but rather because the duration is more or less infinite. in a campaign. So you get Vanguard deployment for all units, you get ambush success chance, enemy battle reinforcement time plus 50%, and army ability number of uses plus 1 for menace below. So you're delaying the enemy entering the battle, you're giving yourself a good amount of ambush success chance, which works for Skaven because they have stock stats, and having Vanguard deployment is genuinely a very damn useful thing. And I'm not talking here about like, oh, we should just get the melee Skaven army and just Zerg rush the enemy. I mean, it can work in some situations, but really the usefulness of this is just being able to deploy your weapon teams and artillery in such positions that the enemy gets curb stomped from the beginning of the battle. It is useful. I won't dispute that. But ambush success chance, that's pretty good as well. Though you can get a good amount of ambush success chance as Skaven inherently. Because there's various traits that are available for Skaven. I mean, I guess you could choose to go for those more useful traits, like getting a Lord with Strong versus, for instance, getting a Warlock Master with a 25% ambush success chance. If we're looking at, or different other traits that you do have available in a Skaven campaign that are pretty useful, or reducing the upkeep of various units, that can certainly be very, very good to focus on. So yeah, those effects are good, but that's kind of like where it stops. What about the +1 armor, +1 base weapon damage per unit experience for all clan rats and storm vermin? Okay, so on the subject of clan rats, this is not going to be such a difference that you're going to freaking want to use them. It is really just a storm vermin benefit more so than anything else. It can be beneficial to clan rats, but seriously, you should never play a Skaven campaign and massacre clan rats. When you got like freaking flamethrowers, warp grinders, gutter runners, plague claws, rattling gunners, Giselles. I will never understand for the life of me the people who argue that clan rats are ever worth recruiting in a Skaven campaign, especially because you can get access to higher tier units very quickly in a Skaven campaign. So yeah, just like, I guess for mass, sure, but for just having a massive amount of armies, but from my experience, just better to have higher quality units than a bunch of lower quality crap stacks. That's my view as the Skaven. Also helps with auto-resolve because, you know, those higher quality units, especially weapon teams, will do better in auto-resolve. And that's important because you reduce casualties in auto-resolve, and hell, you even reduce casualties in manual battles with that. So you don't have to wait for a replenishment. You do have an advantage with Tretch that he does start with an assassin, so he does have the replenishment benefit from the very beginning. Though it's also very easy to get an assassin as well. But then we look at quests. He only has one quest item, which further increases his ambush success chance. Yay, that's even great. So you can get 15 with 25, 40. You can get a huge level of ambush success chance with Tretch. Like, basically, you can be over 100%, right? Though, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think your chance can go over 100%. But if the enemy is reducing your ambush success chance, which they can, then it's counteracting that, just pointing that out. But yeah, this item is not bad, but it's only one item. In fact, it's a pretty solid item. But keep in mind, like, if you're playing Quake, you can get this. If you're playing Tretch, you can get Quake stuff, right? They do complement each other as Legendary Lords. The question is, which faction is the one worth playing? You do get Devastating Flanker, melee attack during ambushes, melee attack after retreating one attack. So he's really trying to push that melee focus playstyle, which again, even with all these benefits, it's inferior to weapon teams. Simple as that. Like, you're gonna be benefiting, even with Tretch's campaign, far more because of the ambush things. Just getting, like, imagine getting an entire Warfare army and just constantly ambushing enemies in a battle, or Vanguard deploying, just obliterating them in seconds, versus having an entire army with clan rats. And also, keep in mind the ambush situation. You might say, oh, you can get a bunch of more armies. How's that gonna play out for you during ambushes? Not necessarily that well, is it? But then you have his special skill line. You do get In confirmed raiding, Tretch's Raiders, which gives base weapon damage, armor piercing, melee attack for allies in range, if they're winning melee combat, which can be a bit tricky for Skaven, especially on higher campaign difficulties. Because of the way, especially if you're thinking about AI stats. Then you do have Master of Guile. Now, I do want to point out that that you are looking at benefiting with Tretch from having both the Lucky Skull Helm and the Master of Guile, because it's 35% ambush success chance. If it was just a skill line, and you have an ambush defense chance, which is not useless. But it's actually better to get Tretch for Queek than the other way around. Remember, generic lords can get sneakies, no 25% ambush success chance, so it might seem like a lot of ambush success chance, but it's really ambush defense chance that's more useful for him, and evasion chance. You do get a replenishment when winning a battle. That's pretty good. Then you get speed and missile resistance for clan rats and storm vermin. So the way I view the designer's intent over here, they were really trying to push the idea of flanking, of Skaven charging, of using specifically storm vermin for that role. Let me explain why that doesn't work. It's called mass. The reason ogres are so good at charging is not because they have such insane charge bump benefits or speed. It's because they have a lot of freaking mass. Now, if Tretch was giving his storm vermin a lot of mass, that might be different, but you get speed, you get missile resistance. But this is more useful. The way I view it, it's more useful to use your storm vermin to protect high value units, and this helps you in that respect because it gives you the extra speed. The speed benefit, of course, is useful if you're chasing out enemy artillery or trying to chase down enemy units, but yeah, if you're thinking like, oh, I'll just rush in melee and zerg the enemy, that is a highly ineffective playstyle compared to what else is available. You do get a regeneration and casualty replenishment, so that's pretty good. Although Tretch's combat ability, he is fairly durable, sure. He does have a high, because he has a high amount of melee defense, but his actual damage capability is not necessarily going to be as great as what you can get otherwise. Compared to what Queek can do. Like, there are a few things, as I've said, that I fear in a campaign. One of those things is actually going in melee with freaking Queek. For good bloody reason. But that is Tretch. On his own, he might not seem that bad. But the reason I make the point that he's useless compared to Queek is exactly what Queek gets in his campaign. So let's go over those details. So looking at Queek over here in terms of his starting position, faction effects, and then lord effects, he does start with the Misty Mountain, Tier 2 settlement with the Clan Moor's headquarters. This allows you to recruit chieftains from the very beginning, so you can actually avoid getting the entire clan pit chain early on in his campaign, because you can recruit chieftains, you can recruit clan rats from the beginning, and thus you can focus on getting other better units. You also get food, growth. It's not as useful of a landmark as Tretch has, to be sure, unless you're talking about the early game situation. Late game situation, Queek's campaign is just crazy when you start looking at it. So, you get hero capacity for chieftain. So you're not just starting a Queek campaign with one chieftain. No, you're starting Queek's campaign with 4 chieftains. Just a comparison worth making. And always keep in mind, you can still build clan pits if you want to. So if you want to go with the full chieftain doom stack, which is a far more effective melee army than anything clan rats or Skaven slaves can give you, that is absolutely an option in his campaign from very, very early on. You get 25% upkeep for Storm Vermin and Clan Rats. The Clan Rat situation doesn't matter. The Storm Vermin one does, however, because Storm Vermin are fairly expensive in terms of their upkeep as far as Skaven units go. You do want a limited number of them, to be sure, in an army. At least that's my perspective on it. But the cost and recruitment duration, because this is one of the problems in Tretch's campaigns, is the recruitment duration. Though you do help solve that if you do get Queek. I'm going to say this as bluntly as possible. You should never play a Skaven campaign and mass recruit Storm Vermin. Even if you don't have any of the Skaven DLC, you should never do that. Because even inherently, even by default, Skaven do have much better options than just like, ooh, Master Crew Storm Vermin. Master Crewing Storm Vermin is the kind of army that sounds great on paper, because if you're playing on lower difficulties especially, you can just auto-resolve your entire campaign. But it is a complete Bob trap in the sense that you're recruiting a really bad army, and it only works until you actually encounter an opponent with a good army that just beats the crap out of you in both auto-resolve and manual battles. I think Legend of the Total War has had several battles as Skaven in general, but both as Queek and Tretch, if I'm not mistaken, where people are just recruiting stacks of Storm Vermin, and it's like, it's not even Storm Vermin with two-handed weapons, it's regular Storm Vermin. It's like, you kind of want Storm Vermin with two-handed weapons because they got armor piercing. Not just the shielded version. The shielded version will be more durable, but you also want that anti-large armor piercing benefit. Anyway, so you can get a bunch of Menace from Below, a bunch of Chieftains very quickly, and because of the campaign situation, well, you can get a lot of money and turn that Karaka's Gull into a higher level settlement. Something else worth pointing out, in terms of campaign starting dynamics, you have a bunch of settlements very close to each other. So you gotta understand, this entire area of Karak 8 Peaks all the way to Misty Mountain is Queek's playground. This is an impregnable fortress of settlements that is very, very difficult. Even if you do have the underway stance to actually take. Like, if Queek takes control of all of this, and if you're playing him, it's very easy to take all of this. That's the thing. Is an impregnable fortress. Now, over here in this campaign, I did use the console command to confederate the Karak 8 Peak so I could just show off what exactly you're getting in this campaign. And this is the real reason why Queek is much better than freaking Tretch, because you obviously have the benefits of getting Karak 8 Peaks. Now, first off, you get the plundered dwarven treasure. This is unique to Queek, and keep in mind, Skaven can get this settlements to tier 5 very quickly. It's expensive, but first off, it gives you an upkeep benefits for Skaven, Slaves, Clan Rats, Night Runners, Guard Runners, and Weapon Teams. So if you want very cheap Clan Rats, you can go with that, but it also cheapens your Weapon Teams. It helps you with diplomatic relations, so confederations. It gives you a lot of money. Otherwise, all you're getting is, like, it's obviously the Pillar City hub. Keep in mind that unless you're confederating Queek, enjoy having to fight him for Karak 8 Peaks, because he's going to take that. But you do get that massive income from sacking and looting settlements as Queek, which is pretty substantial. That will give you a significant amount of money. But that's just not all of it. The Karak 8 Peaks campaigns do have this situation where they might start more limited, but once they get Karak 8 Peaks, it's like overdrive. Like, seriously, play a Belegar campaign. That campaign is over the moment you take Karak 8 Peaks because the benefits are ridiculous. But let's take a look at what Queek has. He loses a bit of control when he doesn't have Karak 8 Peaks, but once he gains it, good luck. On turn start, Lords have a chance to gain 1 loyalty, so basically he nullifies the entire loyalty mechanic to a large extent. It's not quite Clan-ish situation, but you're rarely going to have loyalty issues as Queek. You get Lord Crew rank +2, so higher level Lords, more armies. If you want to play masses of Skaven, guess what? Queek is even better at that specific playstyle than Tretch. Tretch might have better Clan Rats individually, and not necessarily so, because you're looking at just a bit of armor. Whereas Queek has Frenzy for Clan Rats and Storm Vermins faction-wide. It is exclusive to him if he controls Karak 8 Peaks. So Frenzy, 10% piercing damage, 10% charge bonus, 10 melee attack, immune to psychology, so leadership is actually less of an issue. I mean, it still is an issue, to be sure. You do need to have leadership higher than 50% to maintain Frenzy. You don't have Vanguard deployment, so that is one of Tretch's significant advantages, but you want to talk about Skaven Swarm? Here's the Skaven Swarm. Enjoy unleashing the Skaven Swarm on your enemies. But then you get to Lord effects, and that situation there. You reduce enemy leadership for enemy lords and embedded heroes, all of them, in a local region. So this is what makes Queek so crazy. See, leadership for heroes and lords is very difficult to break. And generally when it breaks by default, it's because they're about to die. But because you got Monstrous Ego, you can actually rout enemy lords and heroes far easier. You do get melee attack and weapon strength when fighting against dwarves and greenskins, and guess where you are. You get +2 menace below for his army. Keep in mind, you can still get this as Tretch. So, funnily enough, like, Queek is a better legendary lord if you're playing Tretch's faction. That's not a joke. Then, you do lose 1 loyalty for new recruits. Don't worry, you'll make it back. But you do get leadership for your army. How useful is Encourage, really? And you get hero self-defense +15% chance. This is obviously army-wide. Then you get Frenzy, leadership for Quake, +2 loyalty for Warlord recruits. So you are encouraged to get Warlords, but really, once you take care of 8 peaks, leadership, loyalty is a non-issue, really. You might start with a bit lower loyalty, but you'll more than make up for that. You do cause fear. You do lose loyalty for Graciers, but quite important to have Graciers from my view. You do get Life is very cheap, which, honestly, it's a pretty damn useless skill. But more importantly, you do get Crimson Guard. Ooh, this is useful. The reason this is useful, as you might imagine, because this reduces Storm Vermin recruitment duration from 2 turns to 1 turn. See, that's kind of the problem with Tretch's campaign, and why you want Queek if you're playing Tretch, because even if you're going down that path of mass recruiting Storm Vermin or recruiting Storm Vermin in general, the recruitment duration does hurt you. Whereas Queek can just recruit a bunch of really powerful high melee damage Storm Vermin in 1 turn. I mean, to be sure, you do want to keep him moving, but it is a pretty damn substantial benefit when you're thinking about him. Oh, and just to cap it off, in case you're thinking that somehow Tretch is the only one that has a significant ambush benefit, no. Queek gets 2 control in all provinces, 25% ambush success chance, reduces enemy hero action success chance, and increases your own, and reduces wind recovery time. Then, on top of that, you have, while you don't have the same ambush success chance, you do have Warp Shard Armor and Dwarf Gouger, which 10% ward save, armor, Skaven Corruption. Sure, that's the downside. Melee defense, Warp Shard Armor, reducing... affecting enemy in range, reducing their armor and melee defense. 20% when fighting against dwarves. And yeah, 24 melee attack. 50% armor piercing weapon damage and base weapon damage. This is why Queek is freaking terrifying. Because Dwarf Gouger, like, first off, you do have to understand the dynamics. You have 2 quest battles as opposed to 1. So you're getting a lot of early game money and food from that, which puts you at an advantage. You can get a lot of money from Carrick 8 peaks as well fighting that battle. So you're in a better economic situation. You have a far more defensible campaign situation. And you flat out have better Storm Vermin. Like, even if you're thinking, like, consider this. What would, say, rank 9 Storm Vermin get for Tretch? Because it's 1 armor, 1 weapon strength. Think of that. What you're getting is like, oh, you are almost going to be at 100 armor. Okay, that is not insignificant. I'm not going to lie about that. But 42 weapon strength versus 32. Or you can get Frenzy. I know what I'm freaking picking in a campaign. I'm going with Frenzy, thank you very much. That is generally going to be more useful. Especially because you think about the melee attack situation that Frenzy does give you. You'll do more damage. You won't be as durable, but you'll do more damage. And Storm Vermin's problem is that their actual damage dealing capability is not up to speed. And you certainly shouldn't use them in a charge roll. It's more of a stand-up roll. In conclusion, basically Tretch is better at ambushing. He's worse at everything else. Queek will just devour everything that stands in his path. And he's still pretty damn good at ambushing. Keep in mind that. Skaven being good at ambushing, that's like saying water is wet. Yeah, there's plenty of ways of being really good at ambushing. Confederation with Console Command Confederation with Greenskins. There's plenty of ways to get Skaven good at ambushing in a Skaven campaign. That's not really an issue. So having a benefit, the Vanguard deployment though is the one benefit that Tretch has that is pretty damn substantial. But considering everything Quake has, yeah, if you're playing just better dynamic, better campaign dynamic, better territory, better handling of that territory, better faction effects overall, and far more power, both early on and in terms of scalability in a campaign. So for me, it's a clear winner. Cosine signing out.